At 13:47 hours on December 18, 1944, Staff Sergeant Raymond Kohler sat in the commander's position of an M4A3 Sherman tank at a nameless crossroads 3 miles east of St. Vith, Belgium, watching fragments of his own gun mantlet tumble through the air. The German 88mm shell had hit dead center. Kohler felt the impact through his boots, heard metal shearing, smelled cordite and burning paint. The shell didn't penetrate, but it destroyed every optical device on the tank. The gunner's periscope shattered. The commander's cupola vision blocks exploded into fragments. The driver's directed vision ports ceased to exist. Kohler's Sherman could still move. The 75mm gun still fired. The Ford GA engine ran smooth at idle, but his crew was functionally blind. Kohler keyed the intercom. "Damage report. Everyone sound off." Corporal James Dietrich, the gunner, responded first. "Gunner's sight destroyed. I can't see anything forward." Private First Class Michael Romano, driver. "Direct vision ports gone. I'm on instruments only." Private First Class Thomas Webb, loader. "Checking periscopes." Pause. "All shattered. Everyone." Private Eugene Harris, assistant driver and bow gunner. "Bow gun sight destroyed. Nobody wounded. Nobody killed. Just blind." The tank had been at this position for 11 hours, holding a crossroads that connected 2 American divisions. 14,000 infantry depended on this route. Lose it, and they'd be cut off. Encircled, slaughtered. Standard United States Army tank doctrine was explicit about damaged optics. Withdraw immediately to repair depots. Vision is everything in armored combat. You can't fight what you can't see. A blind tank is a pillbox. Immobile, defenseless. The technical manual, TM9731B, stated it clearly on page 143. Tanks with destroyed optical equipment will disengage and return to battalion maintenance for replacement parts. But Kohler looked at his map, studied the crossroads, calculated what withdrawal meant. The radio crackled. "Battalion command. Easy 3, this is Overwatch 6. Confirm your status." Kohler pressed the transmit button. "Overwatch 6, Easy 3. Direct hit to mantlet. All optics destroyed. Tank mobile. Gun functional. 0 casualties. Easy 3. Withdraw to checkpoint Baker for repairs. Acknowledge." Kohler didn't acknowledge. He was thinking about numbers. By December 1944, American tank crews in the Ardennes were losing optics at catastrophic rates. Artillery fragments, small arms fire, near-miss explosions from German 88mm guns. The Panzers didn't need to penetrate Sherman armor to disable them. They just needed to destroy the vision devices. Battalion casualty reports from the first 2 weeks of December showed 37% of damaged Shermans withdrew from combat, not because of mechanical failure, not because of penetrating hits, because crews couldn't see. The tanks were fine. Engines ran, guns worked, tracks functioned. But doctrine said you can't fight blind. So crews abandoned perfectly functional tanks and retreated to repair depots that were already overwhelmed with legitimate mechanical failures. Kohler had watched it happen. Watched good tanks withdraw. Watched German forces occupy the positions those tanks abandoned. Watched American infantry die retaking ground that never should have been lost. The problem wasn't the tanks. The problem was doctrine that treated destroyed optics like destroyed engines. One was repairable in hours. The other could be worked around. Nobody had figured out how to work around it, until maybe now, because Kohler was thinking about something his father had taught him in Detroit. Raymond Kohler grew up in Detroit, Michigan. His father, Thomas Kohler, worked the Ford assembly line at the River Rouge plant. 43 years installing engines. Thomas knew machines the way most men knew their wives. By sound, by vibration, by smell. Raymond learned young. Age 8, he could identify which cylinder in a V8 engine was misfiring just by listening. Age 12, he could diagnose transmission problems by the pitch of grinding gears. Age 16, he was rebuilding engines in the garage behind their house. When Pearl Harbor happened, Raymond was 23 years old, working as a tank mechanic at Chrysler's Detroit Arsenal tank plant, building M4 Shermans. He understood every system, every component, every sound a properly functioning tank made. He enlisted January 1943. Army wanted him for ordnance repair. He insisted on combat crew. They sent him to tank school at Fort Knox, Kentucky. Graduated top 15% of his class. Not for gunnery, for mechanical aptitude. Instructors said Kohler could hear problems before they showed up on gauges. He arrived European theater June 19, 44. Assigned to 749th Tank Battalion. Given command of an M4A3 Sherman and 4 crew members. 7 months of combat. 23 engagements. 4 confirmed kills. Not exceptional. Not heroic. Competent. Reliable. The kind of tank commander who brought his crew home. His crew had been together 5 months. They'd lost their previous tank to a German Panzerfaust on November 30th, near Aachen. Shaped charge went through the turret side, killed the gunner instantly, wounded the loader. But Kohler, Romano, and Harris survived. Got a new Sherman December 10th. New gunner, Corporal James Dietrich from Wisconsin. New loader, Private First Class Thomas Webb from Tennessee. Dietrich was 22 years old. Dairy farm background, steady hands, good eyes. He'd been a competitive shooter before the war. Rifle team at University of Wisconsin. Scored expert on every Army range qualification. His job was putting 75mm shells exactly where Kohler told him to put them. Webb was 19, youngest crew member, Tennessee mountain country. Grew up hunting, fast hands. Could load the main gun in 8 seconds consistently. His job was keeping Dietrich supplied with ammunition and watching the loaders sector for threats. Romano was 20, New York City, Brooklyn. Never saw a tank before boot camp. But he could drive. Learned on delivery trucks in Brooklyn. Had that city driver instinct for tight spaces and quick reactions. His job was putting the tank wherever Kohler needed it. Exactly when Kohler needed it there. Harris was 18, Oklahoma. Quiet kid. Spoke maybe 20 words a day, but he maintained the bow gun and watched Kohler's blind spots. His job was keeping German infantry off the tank. They'd been in this Sherman 8 days. Now all their optics were destroyed, and Kohler was about to ask them to do something no tank crew had ever done. Fight without seeing. But first, he needed to remember November 22nd. Lieutenant Marcus Chen commanded a Sherman in 2nd Platoon. Good officer, experienced, 14 months in theater. Chen's tank got hit by German artillery near miss on November 22nd. Shell landed 15 feet from his Sherman. Fragments shredded the commander's cupola vision blocks and the gunner's periscope. The tank was mechanically perfect. Engine fine, gun fine, tracks fine, crew uninjured. Chen followed doctrine. Withdrew to the repair depot at battalion headquarters. Took his functional tank off the line because he couldn't see through the sights. German infantry occupied the position Chen abandoned within 30 minutes. 12 American infantrymen died in the counterattack to retake it. Kohler had been there. Had watched those infantry advance. Had watched them get cut down by German machine gun fire from the position Chen left open. After the battle, Kohler found Chen at the depot, asked him why he withdrew. Chen showed him the manual, page 143. Tanks with destroyed optical equipment will disengage. Tank was fine, Chen said. We just couldn't see. can't fight if you can't see. Kohler remembered thinking. But the tank still worked. The gun still fired. You just needed someone to tell you where to aim. 2 weeks later, December 4th. Sergeant William Morrison's tank took small arms fire during a German probe. Machine gun rounds destroyed the commander's cupola and the driver's periscope. Morrison withdrew per doctrine. German Panzer IV occupied his position, used it to destroy 2 American trucks, bringing ammunition to forward units. The pattern kept repeating. 23 times in December alone. Functional tanks withdrawn, positions abandoned, Germans advancing into the gaps. Every time, Kohler thought about his father's lesson. Son, you don't need to see a machine to know what it's doing. You just need to listen. Now, sitting in his blind Sherman at 13:47 hours on December 18th, Kohler was listening. He heard a Maybach HL-120 engine. Distinctive sound. German. 800 yards northwest. Maybe a Panzer IV. Maybe a Stu-G3 assault gun. Definitely tracked. Definitely armored. Definitely moving toward his position. He heard tracks clanking on frozen ground. Metal on ice. The sound carried in the cold December air. He could estimate speed by the rhythm. Maybe 8 kilometers per hour. Cautious advance. He heard radio chatter. German tactical frequency. His tank's radio picked it up. Commands in German. He didn't speak German, but he recognized the cadence. Officers coordinating, units positioning, an attack forming. Kohler looked at his crew. 4 men waiting for orders, waiting for him to follow doctrine and withdraw. He made his decision in 30 seconds. We're staying. Dietrich turned toward him. Sir, we're blind. We can't aim. We can't see targets. We don't aim, Kohler said. We calculate. Webb, you're going to crack that loader's hatch and spot for us. Call out targets by clock position and range. Dietrich, you're going to traverse and elevate manually using the hand cranks. I'll call corrections based on Webb's reports. Romano, if we need to move, you drive on my voice commands. Harris, you watch for infantry through the bow gun port, even broken. You can see shadows and movement. The crew stared at him. This is insane, Dietrich said. This is what we've got, Kohler replied. Crossroads connects 2 divisions, 14,000 soldiers. We withdraw, they're cut off. Germans know that. They're sending tanks and infantry to take this position. We're the only thing stopping them. Webb asked the question everyone was thinking. How do we fight a tank battle without seeing? Kohler keyed the intercom. We listen, we feel, we calculate. And we put rounds where the enemy is, even if we can't see them. The radio crackled again. Easy 3, Overwatch 6. You did not acknowledge withdrawal order. Repeat. Withdraw to checkpoint Baker immediately. Kohler picked up the radio handset. Overwatch 6, Easy 3. Request permission to remain in position. Tank is combat capable. I can hold this crossroads. Easy 3. Your optics are destroyed. You cannot engage effectively. Overwatch 6, requesting permission to try. Long silence. Then, Easy 3, reinforcements are delayed. Earliest relief is 24 hours. Can you hold that long? Kohler looked at his crew, looked at the map, calculated ammunition, calculated the odds. Affirmative, Overwatch 6, we can hold. Acknowledged, Easy 3. Hold that position. Do not let them take the crossroads. Kohler released the transmit button, looked at his crew. Anyone want to say this is impossible? Nobody spoke. Good, because in 90 seconds, we're going to find out if a blind tank can kill Germans. The sound of German infantry boots on frozen ground was getting louder. 400 yards, 300 yards, coming from the tree line north of the crossroads. Kohler's hand moved to Webb's shoulder. When I say you open that, you open. Hatch 2 inches, no more. Tell me what you see. Webb's hand gripped the hatch lever. Ready? The boots were closer. 200 yards. Germans advancing in skirmish line. Kohler could hear their equipment rattling, hear their officers calling quiet commands. He took a breath, felt the tank around him, felt the engine vibrating through the hull, felt his crew waiting. Webb, open the hatch. Tell me what you see. The first test of blind fighting was about to begin. Webb cracked the loader's hatch 2 inches. Cold December air rushed into the turret. He pressed his eye to the gap, scanned the tree line. 20 infantry, maybe 25. Skirmish line, 200 yards, 11 o'clock position. Kohler calculated. 75 millimeter high explosive. Contact fuse. 200 yards, low trajectory. Dietrich, traverse left 30 degrees. Dietrich reached for the manual traverse handle, started hand cranking. The turret moved slowly. The powered traverse was faster, but Dietrich couldn't see to aim it. Manual control gave Kohler precision. Stop. Elevate 2 degrees. Dietrich adjusted. Kohler counted seconds, estimated the gun position by the sound of the elevation mechanism. Webb, load high explosive. Webb grabbed a 75 millimeter HE round from the ready rack, slammed it into the breech. Up! Kohler's hand touched Dietrich's shoulder. Fire! Dietrich pulled the trigger. The gun fired. The Sherman rocked back on its suspension. Smoke filled the turret. Webb watched through the hatch gap. Short, 20 yards short. Adjust right 5 degrees, up 1 degree. Dietrich cranked the controls. Kohler counted the movements, felt the gun position. Fire. Second shot. Webb watched the impact. Hit. Direct hit on the center. They're scattering left into the tree line. Load he. Traverse left 15 degrees. Dietrich cranked. Webb loaded. The gun fired again, this time into the tree line where the Germans scattered. Webb saw branches explode, saw bodies fall. They're withdrawing, running north. The engagement lasted 4 minutes. German infantry withdrew, left 3 dead in the snow. Kohler's crew had just killed enemy soldiers without seeing them through gun sights. Webb closed the hatch, dropped back into the turret. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from cold and adrenaline. It worked, Dietrich said. Jesus Christ, it actually worked. Kohler keyed the intercom. That was the easy one. Infantry in the open. Next time it'll be armor. But now he had data. He understood what worked and what didn't. Time to refine the system. The method required 6 components working simultaneously. Component 1, Webb as primary spotter. The loader's hatch offered a 45-degree vision arc. Limited, but functional. Webb would expose himself to enemy fire. Call targets using clock positions referenced to the tank's heading. Estimate range using visual reference points. Vegetation, buildings, terrain features. A barn at 808 yards. A tree line at 400 yards. He'd call corrections after each shot. Left, right, up, down. Measured in degrees and fractions. Component 2, manual gun operation. Dietrich would operate traverse and elevation mechanisms by hand. Slower than powered controls, but precise. Kohler would call adjustments based on Webb's corrections. Dietrich would crank the handles, count the rotations, feel the gun position through mechanical feedback. The traverse hand crank moved the turret 1 degree per 4 rotations. Elevation was 1 degree per 6 rotations. Muscle memory would replace visual confirmation. Component 3, sound tracking for armored targets. Kohler knew engine sounds. Maybach HL-120 engines powered German Panzer IVs and SUG-3 assault guns. Distinctive 12-cylinder sound, deeper than American radials. Maybach HL-230 engines powered Panthers, even deeper, more displacement. Track sounds indicated movement speed and direction. Steel tracks on frozen ground created specific acoustic signatures. Kohler could estimate range by volume, direction by stereo effect through the hull. Component 4. Vibration sensing. Heavy vehicles created ground vibrations detectable through the tank hull. Kohler and Romano felt them through their seats, through the floor. A Panzer Ford at 800 yards created faint tremors. At 400 yards, distinct vibrations. At 200 yards, strong enough to make tools rattle. The vibrations gave range confirmation when sound alone wasn't precise enough. Component 5. Muzzle flash tracking. When enemy tanks fired, their muzzle flash revealed exact position. Barrel length, flame pattern, and light intensity indicated vehicle type. A Panzer IV's 75mm gun produced a specific flash signature, different from a Stogie 3's longer barrel, different from a Panther's high-velocity weapon. The flash lasted 0.4 seconds, enough time for Webb to mark the position, for Kohler to calculate firing solution, for Dietrich to aim, for the crew to return fire before the enemy reloaded. Component 6. Radio intelligence. German tactical frequencies were sometimes monitored by American radio operators. Not Kohler's crew, but battalion intelligence. They'd relay intercepts when possible. German commanders coordinated attacks over radio, sometimes in clear, sometimes in basic code. Either way, the transmissions revealed unit positions and intentions. A German commander calling for fire support gave away his location. A unit reporting movement exposed their route. The system wasn't elegant, wasn't doctrine, wasn't anything taught at Fort Knox, but it was functional. The crew spent 30 minutes practicing. Kohler calling coordinates, Dietrich hand-cranking, Webb spotting imaginary targets, Romano feeling for vibrations, Harris watching his limited field through the bow gun port. They were ready when the Maybach HL-120 engine sound returned 1420 hours, 1,200 yards west. Closing slowly. Kohler identified it immediately. Panzer IV, single vehicle, moving cautious. The engine sound stopped at 800 yards. Hull down position behind a low ridge. Smart German commander, observing before committing. Webb cracked the hatch. Partial hull visible. 9 o'clock position. Maybe 700 yards. Standoff. Both tanks waiting, neither moving. Kohler understood the German commander's confusion. American Sherman at the Crossroads. Optics clearly destroyed. Visible damage to the mantlet. Why hasn't it withdrawn? Why is it still in position? The Panzer edged forward. Testing. 700 yards. 600 yards. The German commander was probing, seeing if the Americans would react, seeing if the tank was actually functional or just abandoned. At 550 yards, the Panzer fired. The shot missed, struck ground 30 feet right of Kohler's Sherman. Dirt and snow erupted, but the muzzle flash was perfect. Bright orange. Exactly marked the Panzer's position. Traverse left 45 degrees, 0 elevation, fire when ready. Dietrich cranked the traverse, counted rotations, 4 per degree, 45 degrees, 180 rotations. His hands moved fast. The turret swung left. On target. Fire! 3 seconds after the German shot, Dietrich fired back. The 75mm gun hammered. Webb watched through the hatch. Hit! Turret side! They're backing up! The Panzer reversed, trailing white smoke. Hit, but not destroyed. The German crew was pulling back, trying to disengage. Load armor piercing, same aim point. Webb loaded an M61 armor-piercing round. Dietrich held position. The Panzer was still reversing. 500 yards now, moving slow. The smoke trail made it easy to track. Fire. Second shot. Webb called it. Hit again. Penetration. It stopped. Crew bailing out. The Panzer IV sat motionless. Smoke pouring from the turret. German crew members running. 4 men, then 5. Running west toward their own lines. Kohler's blind Sherman had just killed a German tank, not with sight. With sound and calculation and perfect crew coordination. He keyed the radio. Overwatch 6, Easy 3. 1 Panzer IV destroyed. 0 friendly damage. The response came back 30 seconds later. Easy 3, confirm. You engaged and destroyed enemy armor with destroyed optics? Affirmative, Overwatch 6. Silence on the radio. Then, understood, Easy 3. Document your methods. Other units experiencing similar optics damage. Kohler looked at his crew. They were staring at each other. They'd just done something impossible. Something doctrine said couldn't be done. But there wasn't time to celebrate. Because German radio traffic was increasing and the intercepts weren't good. Battalion intelligence relayed transmissions at 1500 hours. German field commander reporting to regiment. American tank at Crossroads destroyed our vehicle. Tank appeared blind. Optics confirmed destroyed at 1347 hours. Tank should have withdrawn. Did not withdraw. Engaged effectively at medium range. Unknown if crew received replacement optics or if position is reinforced. Second transmission. German regimental commander responding. Confirm tank status. If position reinforced, commit additional armor. If single damaged tank, recommend heavy artillery before assault. Third transmission. German intelligence officer. No American reinforcements observed. Tank count 1. Tank mobility, confirmed limited. No repositioning since 1300 hours. Assessment. Crew using non-standard targeting methods. Recommend caution. Kohler listened to the intelligence relay. The Germans were confused. Frustrated. Their doctrine said damaged optics meant withdrawal. The American tank wasn't following expected behavior. That created a tactical problem for German commanders. They couldn't predict American actions if Americans didn't follow their own doctrine. More importantly, German units were hesitating. The Panzer IV commander had been experienced, professional. He'd approached carefully, tested the American response, then committed to engagement. And he'd lost his tank. That story was spreading through German radio traffic, word traveling from company to battalion to regiment. Blind Sherman killed a Panzer IV. Impossible but confirmed. Caution advised. The psychological impact was measurable. At 1600 hours, a German Stu G3 assault gun approached from the northeast. Got within 900 yards, stopped, observed for 10 minutes, then withdrew without firing. The commander decided engagement wasn't worth the risk. At 1715 hours, German infantry probe from the south. 60 soldiers. Got within 400 yards, saw the damaged Sherman, saw the destroyed mantlet. But they'd heard about the morning engagement. They withdrew rather than test the blind tank's defensive capabilities. The Germans were afraid. Not of the Sherman, of the unknown, of tactics they couldn't predict or counter. But Kohler knew it wouldn't last. German command would adapt. They'd commit overwhelming force. More tanks, more infantry, more artillery. Eventually, numbers would overcome innovation. 1847 hours. Darkness complete. Temperature dropping. 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind from the northwest. 10 miles per hour. Felt colder inside the tank. The crew was exhausted. 12 hours at position. 5 hours of continuous tension. 2 engagements. 0 sleep. Minimal food. Water freezing in their canteens. Kohler checked supplies. 35 rounds, 75 millimeter remaining. 2,400 rounds, 30 caliber machine gun. Enough for maybe 3 more engagements, maybe 4 if they were efficient. The radio crackled. Easy 3, Overwatch 6, relief update. Reinforcements delayed minimum 24 hours. Enemy breakthrough northern sector. All reserves committed. You hold position? Kohler did the math. 24 hours, maybe 48, maybe 72 if the northern situation was worse than reported. Ammunition for 3 engagements. Germans would attack at least that many times, probably more. Affirmative, Overwatch 6. Will hold. Acknowledged. Air support unavailable. Artillery support limited. You're alone out there. Understood. Kohler released the transmit button. Looked at his crew. Rotation. 2 men awake, 3 sleeping. 2-hour shifts. Dietrich and Webb first watch. Romano, Harris, and me sleeping. We need rest. Germans will hit us hard tomorrow. Nobody argued. They were too tired. Romano curled up in the driver's compartment. Harris in the assistant driver's seat. Kohler in the commander's position. Uncomfortable. Cold. But sleep came anyway. The engine ran intermittently. 15 minutes on for heat. 30 minutes off for sound discipline. They needed to hear German movements. Engine noise masked acoustic intelligence. At 2300 hours, Webb woke Kohler. Sir, radio intercept. German commander ordering night assault. 2 companies infantry. 0300 hours. Kohler checked his watch. 4 hours. He looked at his crew. They'd gotten maybe 90 minutes of sleep. Not enough. But enough to function. Wake everyone. Load high explosive. We're going to need illumination. Webb hesitated. Sir, we don't have illumination rounds. I know. We're going to improvise. At 0320 hours on December 19th, 1944, the Germans attacked with everything they had. And Kohler's blind crew was about to learn that fighting at night was even harder than fighting during the day. 0320 hours. December 19th, 1944. Kohler heard them before Webb could see them. Boot steps. Many boots. 100 yards out, moving fast. German infantry assault in darkness. Webb, hatch open. Tell me what you've got. Webb cracked the hatch, looked into blackness. Nothing. Too dark. Can't see them. Kohler reached into his jacket. Pulled out a flare pistol. Standard commander's equipment. M8 signal pistol. Loaded with colored flares for marking positions. White, red, band, green, not designed for battlefield illumination. But better than nothing. When I fire the flare, you spot targets fast. Call ranges and positions. We'll have maybe 30 seconds of light. He climbed halfway out of the commander's cupola, aimed the flare gun northwest. Where the boot sounds originated. Fired. The white flare arced into the sky, burst at 200 feet. Magnesium burn, bright white light swinging beneath a small parachute. The battlefield lit up like daylight for 15 seconds. Webb saw them immediately. 60+ infantry, spread formation, 150 yards, 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. Kohler dropped back inside. High explosive, center of formation, 11 o'clock, fire. Dietrich fired. Webb watched the impact through the hatch. Hit! Multiple casualties. They're not stopping. The flare died. Darkness returned. But now Kohler knew their position, knew their direction, knew their speed. Load he, same elevation, traverse right 10 degrees, fire. Another shot into the darkness, another explosion. Webb heard screaming, heard German commands, heard the attack faltering. But some Germans got close. 70 yards, 50 yards. Kohler heard grenades bouncing off the Sherman's hull. Felt the explosions, the armor held. but the Germans were too close for the main gun. Harris, bow gun. Spray the approach from 9 to 12 o'clock. Harris opened fire with the .30 caliber machine gun. Tracer rounds lit the darkness. Kohler climbed back through the cupola, grabbed his M3 grease gun, fired into the shadows. Heard Germans fall, heard them retreat. Webb fired the turret Koch's machine gun. Dietrich helped with his sidearm through a vision port. 5 Americans in a blind tank fighting 60 Germans with small arms and desperation. The engagement lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, 8 German bodies lay within 100 yards of the Sherman. The rest withdrew. Kohler's crew was still alive, still holding the Crossroads. But Webb was bleeding. Shrapnel from a German grenade had caught his right shoulder when he leaned out to spot. Not deep, not arterial, but bleeding steadily. "How bad?" Kohler asked. Webb pressed a field dressing against the wound. "I can still load. I can still spot." "Can you lift rounds?" "Yes, sir." Kohler didn't believe him, but they didn't have replacements. Webb stayed at his position. 0647 hours. Dawn. Temperature 21 degrees. Gray sky. Snow starting to fall. Light flurries. Reduced visibility to 800 yards. Romano was shaking. Not from cold. From exhaustion and the beginning of hypothermia. His lips were blue. His hands trembled. He'd been in the driver's compartment for 18 hours with minimal heating. The Sherman's interior was barely warmer than outside. Harris had a concussion. The near miss from yesterday's 88mm shell had rattled him hard. Blurred vision, headache, nausea. He stayed at the bow gun because leaving his position meant weakness. And weakness meant death. Dietrich's hands were cramping. 4 hours of continuous manual traverse operation. Hand cranking the turret through combat after combat. His fingers barely closed around the crank handles anymore. Kohler was making decisions through fog. 43 hours at position. Maybe 4 hours total sleep. Combat fatigue setting in. But quitting wasn't an option, not with 14,000 soldiers depending on this Crossroads. The sound came at 0715 hours. Multiple engines, big engines. Maybach HL-120 sounds, 3 distinct sources, plus smaller engines, half tracks maybe. Infantry carriers. Kohler keyed the intercom. Armor inbound. Multiple contacts. Everyone sharp. But his crew wasn't sharp. They were degraded. Operating at 40% effectiveness against fresh German forces. The first contact came from southeast. Stoogie 3 assault gun, 900 yards, moving toward a ridge position. Webb spotted it through the hatch. Assault gun, 4 o'clock, moving slow. Kohler calculated the intercept. Traverse right 90 degrees, elevation 3 degrees. Dietrich cranked. His hand slipped twice. Finally got the turret on target. Ready? Fire! Near miss. The round impacted 20 yards short. Kohler called correction. Up 1 degree. Second shot. Hit. The Stoogie's track broke. Vehicle immobilized. Crew bailing out. But simultaneously, Panzer IV appeared from northwest. 600 yards. Closing fast. Harris saw it through the bow gun port fragments. Tank, 10 o'clock, 600 yards. The traverse was too slow. 90 degrees from southeast to northwest. Dietrich started cranking, but the Panzer fired first. The shot hit Sherman's glacis. 75mm armor held, but the impact threw Kohler against the turret wall. His head hit metal, ears ringing, vision blurred for 3 seconds. Dietrich kept cranking. Got the gun pointed northwest, fired blind. The shot went wide, missed by 50 yards. Correction, left 5 degrees. Second shot, hit. The Panzer's turret took the round, non-penetrating. But the impact made the German commander cautious. The Panzer backed up, started withdrawing. Webb called new threat. "Second Panzer, north, 1,000 yards." This one was smart, staying at range. Outside effective Sherman killing distance. Long-range duel starting. The German fired, missed. Round impacted 200 yards short. Kohler ordered Romano. "Back us up 50 yards. I'll guide you." Romano engaged reverse gear. "Sir, I can't see. You have to tell me everything." "Straight back. Straight. Keep rolling. Stop." The Sherman backed up. New position. Better angle on the distant Panzer. Webb spotted it. 12 o'clock. 1,300 yards. Partial hull exposed. Long shot. Maximum range. Low probability hit. But Kohler calculated lead. Calculated drop. Calculated wind. Traverse 3 degrees right. Elevation 5 degrees. Fire. Miss. The round fell short, but close. Up 1 degree. Second shot. Track hit. The Panzer stopped. Mobility killed. Same aim point. Fire. Third shot. Penetration. The Panzer's turret erupted in flames. Crew escaping through hatches. 90-minute engagement. 3 German armored vehicles destroyed. But the cost was showing. Webb's shoulder wound was infected. Red streaks climbing toward his neck. He needed antibiotics, needed a hospital. But he stayed at the loader's position. Romano's hypothermia was worse. He was barely conscious, responding to commands on delay, shaking violently. Harris vomited twice from concussion symptoms, but he kept watching his sector. Dietrich could barely feel his hands, but he kept cranking the traverse. Kohler's ammunition count, 22 rounds, 75 millimeter. If Germans attacked with 5 tanks simultaneously, the crew was finished. The radio crackled. "Easy 3, Overwatch 6. Situation update. Reinforcements still delayed. Enemy pressure increasing across front. Can you hold?" Kohler looked at his crew, looked at their condition, calculated their remaining capability. "Affirmative. We'll hold." But he knew the truth. One more major assault might break them. What Kohler didn't know was that his method was spreading. Other tank commanders were hearing about the blind Sherman at the Crossroads, hearing about sound-based targeting, hearing about loaders spotting through hatches, hearing about manual fire control. At 0930 hours, Lieutenant Marcus Chen's Sherman took artillery fragments, lost his gunner's periscope. Standard procedure, withdraw. But Chen remembered Kohler's radio transmission, remembered the method. Chen ordered his loader to spot through the hatch, ordered his gunner to traverse manually. Engaged a German Panzer IV at 700 yards, destroyed it on the second shot. Chen radioed battalion. "We just killed a Panzer using sound targeting. Loader spotted. Manual traverse. It works." At 1100 hours, Sergeant William Patterson's tank lost commander's cupola vision blocks. Patterson tried Kohler's method. His crew destroyed a Stug 3 using muzzle-flash tracking. The German assault gun fired first, revealed its position. Patterson's gunner fired at the flash point. Direct hit. Patterson's combat report went to Battalion S3. Intelligence officer read it. Read Chen's report. Read Kohler's original transmission. Started documenting the technique. By 1300 hours, December 19th, 4 Sherman crews had used variations of blind fighting methods. Combined results: 6 German armored vehicles destroyed. 0 American tank losses. Battalion commander noticed the pattern, requested formal documentation from Kohler, but Kohler was too busy fighting to write reports. German radio traffic was increasing. Intercepted transmissions showed frustration. One transmission at 1400 hours. American tank tactics changing. Crews fighting with damaged optics. Standard suppression methods ineffective. Recommend overwhelming force. Second transmission at 1500 hours. Tank at Crossroads must be eliminated. Crew using audio-based targeting. Commit all available armor and artillery. The Germans were adapting, learning, preparing. At 19:20 hours, German artillery started. 105mm howitzer, 47 rounds in 8 minutes. Kohler's Sherman took fragments, paint stripped, external equipment destroyed, radio antenna shredded, spare track blown off the hull. But the armor held. The crew survived. Kohler knew what artillery barrage meant. Softening up. Infantry assault coming next. 21:45 hours. German infantry attack. 60 soldiers. Darkness. Webb couldn't spot effectively. Too dark. Too chaotic. Kohler used his last 3 flares. Each illumination gave 30 seconds of targeting. 3 flares. 90 seconds total. The crew fired high explosive into infantry concentrations, fired machine guns through every opening, threw grenades from hatches. 17-minute firefight. Germans got within 100 yards, close enough to see faces in the flare light. Young faces, scared faces, faces that looked like American faces except for the uniforms. The Germans withdrew. 8 bodies left behind. Kohler's crew still held. December 20th, 0200 hours, 43 hours at position. The crew was broken, Webb's infection spreading, Romano unconscious from hypothermia, Harris vomiting blood, Dietrich's hands swollen, Kohler making decisions through hallucination-level exhaustion. But the Crossroads still held. At 0630 hours, the sound came. 4 Maybach engines, heavy, all HL-120 type, 4 Panzer IVs, plus infantry, estimated 100 soldiers, the Germans' final assault. Everything they had against 5 dying men in a blind tank with 16 rounds remaining. December 20th, 1944, 0647 hours. 4 Panzer IVs approached from 4 directions, north, south, east, west. German commander had learned from previous failures. Simultaneous multi-vector assault. Impossible to defend all sectors with 1 blind tank. Kohler made the calculation. 4 threats, 16 rounds. 4 rounds per tank maximum. No margin for error. No missed shots allowed. Webb, I need you conscious. Webb was leaning against the turret wall. Fever from infection. Shoulder red and swollen. But he opened his eyes. Ready, sir? Romano, can you hear me? Romano didn't respond. Unconscious in the driver's seat. Hypothermia had won. Kohler would have to fight without maneuver capability. Static defense only. Dietrich, Harris, this is everything. 4 Panzers. We prioritize by threat. Closest tank gets engaged first. Forget the others until that one's dead. Understood? Understood. The 1st Panzer came from northeast. 1,100 yards, closing steady. Webb spotted it. 2 o'clock, 1,100 yards, Panzer IV. Kohler calculated. Long range. Moving target. Required lead. Traverse right 60 degrees. Elevation 4 degrees. Fire when steady. Dietrich cranked. His swollen hands slipped. He gritted teeth. Kept cranking. Got the gun on target. Steady. Fire. Hit. The Panzer's glacis took the round. Non-penetrating. But the impact slowed the advance. Same target. Up 2 degrees. Second shot. Turret hit. Penetration. The Panzer stopped. Smoke rising. But simultaneously, 2nd Panzer from southwest. 800 yards. Closer. More dangerous. Traverse left 120 degrees. Dietrich cranked. The turret swung. Too slow. The German Panzer fired first. The shot struck Sherman's turret side. 75mm armor barely held. Metal fragments sprayed inside. Harris took shrapnel in the leg. Kept fighting. Dietrich got the gun pointed. On target. Fire! Near miss, 20 yards right. Left 3 degrees. Correction. Second shot, direct hit. The Panzer's engine compartment exploded. Crew bailing. 3rd Panzer. Northwest, 600 yards, Webb calling it. 10 o'clock, 600 yards, moving toward ridge. Kohler was operating on pure instinct. No thought. Just calculation, muscle memory, crew coordination burned into reflex. Traverse left 90 degrees, 0 elevation. Dietrich cranked. Webb loaded. The gun fired. Hit on first shot. The Panzer's track broke. Mobility kill. Same target. Fire. Second shot. Penetration through turret ring. Catastrophic kill. The Panzer erupted in flames. 4th Panzer. 700 yards. Deliberate advance from north. This commander was smart. Watching the American tank destroy 3 of his companions. Staying at range. Waiting for the Sherman to run dry. Kohler checked his count. 4 rounds remaining. This Panzer commander knew the Americans were low on ammunition. He was being patient, forcing Kohler to waste shots. Hold fire. Let him close. The German Panzer advanced. 600 yards, 500 yards. Webb watched through the hatch. He's not stopping, coming straight at us. At 400 yards, the Panzer stopped. Hull down behind a low rise. Smart position. Only turret exposed. Harder target. The German fired. The shot missed. Struck ground beside the Sherman. But the muzzle flash marked his exact position. Traverse 5 degrees right. Elevation 1 degree. Fire. First shot. Miss. Went high over the turret. 3 rounds remaining. Down 2 degrees. Second shot. Hit. Non-penetrating. The Panzer's turret armor held. 2 rounds remaining. The German was reloading. Kohler had maybe 15 seconds before the next German shot. 1 more chance. Maybe 2. Same target. Aim for turret ring junction. Dietrich adjusted. Fraction of a degree. His hands were shaking. But years of training took over. He felt the gun position through the traverse mechanism. Felt it settle. Fire. Direct hit. The round penetrated the turret ring, the weak point where turret met hull. Catastrophic ammunition detonation. The Panzer's turret blew completely off, landed 20 feet from the hull. Silence. The 4th Panzer was dead. But German infantry was closing. 100 soldiers, 300 yards. Moving fast, determined. Kohler had 1 round of 75mm remaining, then only machine guns. Load high explosive, center of formation, fire. Last main gunshot. The explosion caught maybe 10 Germans. The rest kept coming, 200 yards, 100 yards. Machine guns, all positions, fire everything. Dietrich on the Cokes, Harris on the bow gun, Kohler and Webb with personal weapons through hatches. 30 caliber tracers lighting the dawn, Germans falling. But more coming. At 50 yards, German officer called retreat. His men had watched 4 Panzers die, watched their friends die. They'd had enough. The assault broke. Germans withdrawing across frozen ground. Kohler's Sherman sat silent. Engine idling, gun empty, crew barely alive, but still holding the Crossroads. 11:30 hours. Sound of American engines, M4 Shermans, M10 tank destroyers, relief column arriving. 67 hours after Kohler took position. Lieutenant Marcus Chen commanded the lead tank. He pulled alongside Kohler's Sherman, climbed out, walked to the blind tank, looked at the damage. Mantlet destroyed. Every optic shattered. Hull scarred with bullet impacts and shrapnel. Paint burned away, the tank looked dead. But it had held. Chen climbed onto the Sherman, looked through the commander's cupola, saw the crew inside. Webb unconscious from infection. Romano hypothermic and unresponsive. Harris bleeding from shrapnel wounds. Dietrich barely able to move his hands. Kohler sitting in the commander's seat, eyes open, still watching. "How did you do it?" Chen asked. Kohler's voice was hoarse. 67 hours of breathing cordite smoke. "We listened. We calculated. We fought." "How many did you get?" 9 armored vehicles. 43 infantry killed or captured. 0 friendly killed. Chen stared. "You held this position for 3 days. Blind. Against everything they sent." "Someone had to." Medical evacuation arrived at 1200 hours. Webb went first. Severe infection, required surgery, shipped to field hospital at Liege. Romano second. Hypothermia, critical condition. Harris third. Shrapnel removal, concussion treatment. Dietrich fourth. Frostbite, nerve damage in hands. Kohler stayed until formal relief at 1245 hours. He climbed out of his Sherman, looked back at it. The tank that shouldn't have fought. The tank that held a crossroads because doctrine was wrong. A recovery crew arrived, examined the Sherman, declared it total loss, too much damage. Optics destroyed, hull compromised, not worth repairing. They towed it to the depot, stripped useful parts, scrapped the rest. But the technique lived on. December 28, 1944. Battalion intelligence officer interviewed Kohler at the field hospital. Formal report. Sound-based targeting procedures for optically damaged armored vehicles. The report documented every component of Kohler's method. Webb spotting through loader's hatch, Dietrich's manual fire control, sound tracking, vibration sensing, muzzle flash targeting, radio intelligence integration. The report went to division headquarters, January 3, 1945. Skeptics said it was impossible. Tank gunnery required visual confirmation. You couldn't fight blind. But statistics from December battles showed 8 Sherman crews used similar methods. Combined results: 14 German armored vehicles destroyed. 0 American tank losses among crews using sound targeting. The numbers convinced the skeptics. January 12, 1945. First Army Armored School developed. Training module. Emergency blind fighting procedures for M4 series tanks. Based entirely on Kohler's technique at the Crossroads. Taught to all replacement crews arriving in theater. February 1945. 83 Sherman crews trained in the method. March 1945. Incorporated into standard tank training at Fort Knox, Kentucky. Every new tank commander learned Kohler's innovation, not as primary doctrine, as emergency procedure. What to do when optics failed, how to fight when you couldn't see. The technique saved 22 tanks from unnecessary withdrawal in the final 3 months of the European War. Conservative estimate: 110 crew members survived because they didn't abandon functional tanks. Tanks that could still fight. Tanks that just couldn't see. The war ended May 1945. Kohler's crew scattered. Webb recovered from his infection. Shoulder healed with reduced mobility. Returned to Detroit. Worked General Motors assembly line for 37 years. Married. 3 children. Died 1989. Age 64. Heart attack. Funeral mentioned his Bronze Star. Didn't mention the Crossroads. Romano survived hypothermia, permanent nerve damage in extremities. Returned to New York City, Brooklyn. Drove taxi for 37 years. Never married. Lived alone. Died 2003, age 79. Funeral attended by 12 people. Fellow cab drivers mostly. Harris recovered from shrapnel wounds and concussion. Returned to Oklahoma. Worked oil fields. Married twice. Divorced twice. 5 children. Died 1998, age 72. Liver failure. Buried in Tulsa. Dietrich's hands never fully recovered. Nerve damage from manual traverse operation. Frostbite. Returned to Wisconsin. Dairy farm, his father's farm. Milked cows for 40 years with damaged hands. Never complained. Never talked about the war. Died 2011, age 89. His obituary mentioned he served. Didn't mention he hand-cranked a gun turret for 67 hours straight. Kohler returned to Detroit. Ford assembly line. Same plant his father worked. Same work. Installing engines. 34 years. Retired 1979. Never granted interviews. Military historians contacted him in the 1980s. He declined. I did my job, so did my crew. That's all. The crew reunited once. December 1984. 40th anniversary of the Crossroads. They met at Kohler's house in Detroit. Looked at photographs from Belgium. Talked about the blind tank. About 77 hours fighting without seeing. About holding ground everyone said they'd lose. Webb said it. We shouldn't have survived. Romano agreed. But we did. Dietrich looked at Kohler. Because you figured it out. Kohler shook his head. We all figured it out. Together. That was their only reunion. No ceremonies, no speeches. 5 men who held a crossroads, drinking beer in a Detroit living room. Remembering. Kohler died January 14th, 2007. Age 88. Buried in Detroit. Simple gravestone. No mention of the Crossroads. No mention of blind fighting. No mention of 9 kills. Just Staff Sergeant, United States Army, World War II. But his innovation lived. Blind fighting techniques were taught at United States Army Armor School through the Korean War, adapted for M46, M47, M48 Patton tanks. The principle remained. Damaged optics don't equal destroyed tank. Use all available senses. Crew coordination, verbal fire control. Fight with what you have. By the 1960s, redundant optical systems made the technique less critical. But training continued. Emergency procedures. Degraded optics doctrine. Modern M1 Abrams tanks have multiple backup sighting systems. Thermal imaging. Laser rangefinders. Computer fire control. Technology Kohler never imagined. But doctrine still includes degraded optics procedures. Direct lineage to a blind Sherman at a nameless crossroads in Belgium. To 5 men who prove tanks don't need perfect vision. They need crews who adapt, who calculate, who fight. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe to keep these forgotten stories alive. Comment below and tell us where you're watching from. These men held a crossroads most people never heard of. They fought blind and won. They changed how America fought tank battles. They deserve to be remembered. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making sure Raymond Kohler, James Dietrich, Michael Romano, Thomas Webb, and Eugene Harris don't disappear into silence.